Have you ever just looked at a rock and then looked at a tree and really wondered what's the fundamental difference?
I mean, beyond the obvious, one is alive and one isn't, but what does being alive actually mean?
So, what is life? It sounds like a question for a philosophy class, right? But for centuries, this has been the fundamental question driving biologists. What is this spark that animates matter and gives it this incredible property we call life?
So in this explainer, we're going to build a kind of user's guide to the living world. We'll start with what it means to be alive, then try to wrap our heads around the sheer scale of it all. After that, we'll get into the science of naming things, check out life's universal filing system, and wrap up with the actual tools biologists use every day.
All right, first things first. To really understand what life is, we need to break it down. Scientists have zeroed in on 5 key characteristics that, when you look at them all together, draw a pretty clear line between the living and the non-living.
The first property is growth. This seems totally obvious, right? Living things get bigger. It's all about an increase in mass and the number of cells. But hang on a second, don't things like mountains or crystals also grow?
And that's the catch. The crucial difference is how they grow. A living thing grows from the inside out. It's an internal process of cells dividing and getting bigger. A mountain, on the other hand, just has more stuff piling up on its surface. It's an external thing. That's the key.
Next up, reproduction. Life makes more life. Pretty fundamental. But here's a fun little curveball for you. What about worker bees or mules? They are 100% alive, but they can't reproduce. So, while making babies is a hallmark of life, it's not a deal breaker for being considered alive on its own. Now, let's talk about the chemical engine, metabolism. This is the sum of all the crazy chemical reactions happening inside an organism to keep the lights on. But what's really fascinating is that we can replicate these reactions in a test tube. We call them living reactions, but no one would call a test tube a living thing. It's the organization of that chemistry inside a cell that's magic. Which brings us to what is probably the single most important, non-negotiable rule: cellular organization. Every single living thing that we know of, from the tiniest bacterium to the biggest whale, is made of at least one cell. The cell is the basic unit of life. No cells, no life. End of story.
And finally, consciousness. This is the ability to sense what's going on around you and react. Think of a plant turning towards the sun or you yanking your hand away from something hot. That's consciousness. Humans, though, we have this extra kind of meta layer, self-consciousness. We are aware that we are aware. It's things like viruses that check some of these boxes but not others that really keep scientists debating where the line is drawn. Okay, so we've got our working definition of life, even with a few fuzzy edges. But that just opens up a whole new can of worms. When you actually stop and look around, the sheer variety of life on this planet is just staggering. How on earth do we even begin to get a handle on it all? Just let that number sink in for a second. Somewhere between 1.7 and 1.8 million. That's the number of different species we've managed to discover and name so far. And listen, that's just what we've found. This incredible variety is what we call biodiversity. Trying to study it without a system would be like trying to find a book in a library the size of a city with no catalog. It's chaos.
So what do you do with beautiful chaos like that? You build a system. You create a universal language for biology. That system is called taxonomy. It's the science of identifying, naming, and classifying every single living organism so that a scientist in Brazil and a scientist in Japan are always talking about the same thing. And the process itself is just so wonderfully logical. It's a 4-step dance. First, you characterize it. What are its features? Then you try to identify it. Does it match anything we've seen before? After that, you classify it. You put it into groups with its relatives. And finally, the last step, nomenclature. You give it an official, standardized name. And that naming system, binomial nomenclature, is just pure genius. Thanks to a guy named Carolus Linnaeus, every species gets a unique 2-part Latin name. It's like a first and last name. For us, it's Homo sapiens. This simple idea created a universal language that cuts through all the confusion of common names, like gopher or sparrow, which can mean different animals in different places. So now, let's see how this all clicks together to create this massive universal filing system for life. And to make it really stick, we're going to follow one animal you all know, the tiger, all the way down the classification ladder. This right here is the taxonomic hierarchy. The best way to think about it is like a complete postal address for every living thing. Each level, or taxon, gets more and more specific, and the further down you go, the more closely related the organisms are.
So let's start near the bottom, at the genus level. Here you see a tiger, Panthera tigris, and a lion, Panthera leo. They're obviously different species, but you can tell they're cut from the same cloth, right? They share enough key features to be grouped in the same genus, Panthera.
Okay, now let's take one step up the ladder to family. The circle gets wider. The family Felidae includes the genus Panthera, our big cats, but it also includes other cat-like genera, like Felis, which has the domestic house cat. They're all part of the cat family, but a lion and a house cat are definitely more like cousins than siblings.
And here it is, the whole shebang. The tiger's full address in the Book of Life. Kingdom, Animalia, phylum, Chordata. Class, Mammalia. Order, Carnivora. Family, Felidae. Genus, Panthera. And the unique species, Tigris. Every living thing has an address just like this.
So that's the system, that's the theory. But how do scientists actually use this in the real world? Let's wrap up by looking at the hands-on tools of the trade, the taxonomical aids that help them make sense of it all.
First, you have amazing places like the Kew Royal Botanical Gardens. These aren't just pretty parks, they are living libraries. They have huge collections of living plants from all over the world, each one labeled with its scientific name, acting as a vital reference for researchers.
Museums play a similar role but for preserved specimens. They're like time capsules, holding collections of plants and animals that can be studied for hundreds of years. From insects perfectly pinned in drawers to the massive skeletons of whales, they are an unpriceless record of life on Earth.
And this is one of the coolest tools, a taxonomic key. It's basically a choose-your-own-adventure for identifying organisms. It presents you with a series of paired choices. Does it have feathers? Yes or no. Does it have 6 legs? Yes or no. You follow the path your answers create, and it leads you straight to the identity of what you're looking at.
So, from defining that initial spark of life to building this amazing universal language to catalog it all, taxonomy gives us a powerful framework. But it's not a closed book. We know there are millions of species still out there, waiting to be discovered. So the real question is, in a rapidly changing world,